can do it.
By 1977, she had been listed twice in the world's Who's Who of Women, and most recently in the International Who's Who and Strathmore's Who's Who as well. And so with that, she's a who's who in our book. Please welcome to the stage, Pat Lynch. So, Pat, it's interesting because you grew up in the South, and
I sure did.
You sure did. I don't know how you're going to prove that to us, but so at some point you decided you were going to go do something that nobody was doing in your circle, which were women, and that was actually work. And not that that's a good thing or a bad thing, but in your case, people looked at it how?
Well, I was told by my friends that if really women only work long enough to go find a husband and have babies, and that because I did more work than was necessary, that there must be something wrong with me. There was.
Well, the sad thing here is that not only were you trying to better yourself and do something that was of interest to you and to a lot of people, but you were not only criticized in the normal work environment, you were being criticized by your own peers, by the women you were actually trying to help as well.
Well, you know, at that time, I hesitate to say this, but I didn't have a very high opinion of women. I grew up when the women went to the kitchen and the men went to the living room, and the women talked about babies and husbands, and the men talked about interesting things. So I would go to the living room and sit behind the stuffed chairs and listen to the men's conversation. So I came up thinking the men knew where it was at, and I was trying to do it that way. So it took quite a long while to begin to see that there were a lot of women coming along that wanted to have a voice, and that they weren't being given that opportunity.
So what was the first thing that you did in order to be able to give women that voice?
You know, I was talking to a wonderful woman in the back, and I think really I had to come to grips with myself. I had to learn about myself. Some of the same things that you went through, interestingly enough, right? I think everyone...
You started growing your hair?
Already had long hair.
You already had long hair, okay.
That wasn't a problem.
That wasn't the problem, okay. So, but yeah, so you were being criticized by the men and the women, and yet you wanted to give voice to the women because you felt that the reason even the women were criticizing is because of ignorance.
Well, you know, at that particular point in my early career, I just really wanted to do what I wanted to do. Very similar to you, and I just didn't see why it should be any different, even though it was. And I almost, as you might say, lucked into what I did because I thought, well, what do I have to lose? So I left the other world that I was in, started my own agency, really not thinking it'd even succeed. But I worked really, really hard. And my attitude was, if I just keep putting it out there, someone will show up and say, yeah, you know, I think this girl has something. And, you know, it's funny how the universe will pop up and support you. And I think that happened, and it's given me always a good base because once you put it out there, amazing people show up in your life. And I always had amazing people showing up to help me.
I feel the same way, and here you are. and you know, it's interesting because, okay, so you started doing that, and the thing is that it still was a hard road, and you've come along so far, and yet there are women still today that feel that they are in the place that you were 30 years ago.
You know, every time I come to a women's conference such as this, you're always meeting people who are there looking for the answers, looking to find their path, looking to find their voice. And it's always inspiring to meet people who tell you their story about how they found their path, how they got on it. And all those stories, I think, are really, really important. We try and encourage women to come to Women's Radio and tell their story so that other women and men can hear that and be inspired and go do their work too.
Now, actually, you have Women's Calendar which is now the largest
It's the largest listing of events for women in the world.
in the world.
Yeah, and we have over, I think, 3,000 organizations that are posting events there at any one time. And it's growing, growing, growing. It's a lot
And
of
look what
fun.
you did.
Well, you know, and that wasn't, it's funny, the things you do, why you do them, and how they turn out. And we really did that because we were being blocked at the time from being able to move forward, largely because the technology wasn't ready to do the radio. So we said, well, we still need to give women a voice. We still need to create a large base. And we understood that women leaders showed up in the greatest numbers in not-for-profit organizations. And yet, the not-for-profits at that time were very insular. So they just kind of stuck to themselves and did their thing. By creating the calendar, we really not only wanted to reach the women through those organizations and be a service to them, but at the same time, let them see what everyone was doing so that we could be more cooperative in nature. And it has worked to some degree to do that.
So you were growing up and you didn't have role models, and now what you're doing is providing a role model, and you're also providing a space for other women to not only see that other women are doing things, but they get to hear what they're doing.
Well, you know, really what came to me, I really loved radio and television, even when I was doing advertising. It was fun and it was really powerful, and people used to say that radio and television were the motivating media. And as I was really captivated by that, and you know, when you focus on things, information comes to you. And I ended up attracting this amazing man. He's still walking around. He's just wonderful. His name is Joseph Chilton Pierce. He's a child development and a human development authority, and he has this gift of being able to buddy up with some of the most amazing people on the planet, like David Bohm, who was Einstein's protege. And so he would absorb their information, and then when he gave lectures, he would just give you these pearls of wisdom. So one of the things that I learned from him is that there is a nerve that links the inner ear to the limbic system of the brain. Well, the reason that's important is because what you hear goes to the place in your brain where you actually make choices. And so then later on, he hung out with this heart surgeon and found out that there is a nerve that links the limbic system of the brain to the heart. So then the light bulbs come on, right? So you know the little aphorisms that say what you hear can hurt someone's heart, or, you know, listen to your heart. Well, there's a real reason for that. And then it made using your voice and using mediums that carried your voice even more important. So I know how powerful the spoken word is, and I know when you put it out over a large medium that it can influence not just a few people, but whole cultures of people. So we still have a long way to go.
So the ear bone's connected to the heart bone.
That's right.
And this resonates with me, actually, because so what you're putting out there, people are hearing, they're taking it in.
Exactly.
And their lives are shaped by it.
And they're making other choices. They're motivated, as it were, to make a different choice. If I hear what, like your story that you were just telling, I'm thinking, I didn't know that about you, Filippo. That's very inspiring. I've gone through things like that too. And look what you've accomplished. I think I can do that too. And as we help one another and inspire one another, then we don't have to wait to come back and play.